Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Brotherly Glove podcast alongside my brother, Johnny. I'm your host, Kyle Fisher. Two brothers from Philly talking all things Philly sports, all things sports nationally. We've seen it all, the best and worst of the teams, players, and coaches to come through here, the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs, the wins and losses. We've watched it all, and for 30 years combined, we've covered it all as members of sports media, bringing you a unique perspective to your ear holes. Today's episode is a big one. We got plenty of Sixers talk, a dominant game from the Big Three, and then some in Philly against the Bucks this week. Another week has passed, and there are, of course, less options available for the Eagles at the offensive coordinator position, and a mysterious tease from Adam Schefter on the radio this week. We'll dive into that a little bit and get our thoughts on what we feel that tease could be. And on top of that all, Phillies lost another fan favorite, this time to the San Francisco Giants. But first, if you followed us on social media, you know where I was this weekend. You probably know that you were seated on your couch in front of the television to watch the AFC and NFC championships. I was, of course, present in Denver for the snow game that we did not expect at all. It was a pretty wild environment there. And we know who the winners were. Super Bowl is now set. Johnny, Seahawks, Patriots, running it back from about a decade ago. How we feeling after this weekend's awesome football matchup?
It feels good, ready for the Super Bowl. I think we got some really exciting teams, and it's cool. Even though the Patriots, the franchise we've seen in the Super Bowl a lot, it still feels like some new blood. So yeah, these 2 weeks always kill you. Let's get to the game.
Yeah, man. What was it? Alshon with the Eagles, who during the Radio Row week when they won that first Super Bowl, he was like, "Man, I wish we didn't have to do any of this crap. I just want to get to the game, man." He's like, and that's how I feel. Radio Row, awesome place. If you haven't been, great place to connect, to network. Met our friend Serena Morales there. So a great experience there myself. But I agree, man. 2 weeks is a long time to wait to get to the big one. So what were your initial takeaways from the Denver game watching at home? Because obviously I can give you a different perspective down there on the field. But
my takeaways were, where did all the snow come from? So
right.
You were right in the middle of it. I think it played out the way I thought it would. I thought the Denver's defense is great, and they were going to struggle on offense. And if they can hold the New England offense down, then this game played out. Outside of the weather changing, I think the score and the way teams moved the ball seemed pretty on point. So I think the more interesting thing is what the snow and the weather did to the game and the people involved, and you would know. So tell us what it was like out there.
Yeah, Johnny. So I checked the forecast the night before, and there was a 0% chance of precipitation. That's how surprising this change was. Now, I've also heard a saying, being in Denver a lot this year, that if you don't like Colorado's weather, just wait an hour, because it's ever changing, especially on the east side of the mountain. However, it is so snow is not surprising, especially this time of year, but it did take us by surprise. I mean, the graphics that they showed during the telecast and on social media, there's no exaggeration. I went in with, there was a little bit of clouds in the air, but at halftime I ran in to grab something for a report that we had to do and to use the restroom, and when I ran back out, I was like, oh man, there's flurries. There was no sign of flurries, nothing in the forecast. There was like a 40% chance about an hour or two before game time, or right around, about 2 hours before game time, we saw 40% chance. And there still wasn't a guarantee that it was going to hit our section of Denver. So it was kind of, you were as prepared as you possibly could be. We knew it was going to be cold. We knew it was going to be windy. Watching the kickers pregame was very interesting because wind was changing between kicks, right? Normally it moves in one pretty specific direction, but it was whipping all over the place. And then you add in the fact that, Tracy and Evan both did great reports on this early in the fourth quarter. But if you were looking a certain direction, you couldn't see anymore. And in the fourth quarter, that's the direction that that the Denver offense was going. So it was really an uphill battle for them late in the game. It really did change the tide of the atmosphere in the building. It changed the way that everybody felt. And that Patriots defense that we all know is good, but I don't think people realize how good. It's still in that elite conversation with the Seattles and Houston and those other teams. They did what they were supposed to do, and I guess the Patriots got a little bit of help by Payton not knowing that this weather was coming either and not taking the points early in the game. I don't know how that felt from the outside. So, Johnny, I know that was the big talking point coming out of it was, man, it's the playoffs. You have a backup quarterback. You got to take the points. But early in the game, and you don't expect snow on the other side. Was that a risk worth taking, or were the announcers and kind of social media upset about that right away?
So you're talking about when they went for it, on 4th and 1 from the 14 in the second quarter?
Right.
I mean, I'll ask you this. You say take the points, right?
Yes.
How many field goals were made in that game?
Was it one?
How many field goals were missed?
2?
4.
4. Oh, yeah. That's right.
So I'm not pushing back at you, but the whole conversation, you don't just get to take the points, right? You don't get to sign up and say, give us 3 and we'll just spin it back to them. You have to make the kick. And I think Payton, I'm looking at 4th and 1. I mean, I'm going for it almost any time on 4th and 1. And especially with the new kickoff rules and where touchbacks come out to, we're seeing starting field position come out be further. Even if you don't make that, you're gaining 20 yards of field position by sticking them down there. So I would say, I know it's an easy thing to say looking back. And I know there were people saying at the time, but it didn't jump out to me like, oh my gosh, this is some huge mistake. And whether he knew about the snow or not, I think I would look at it this way. If points were going to be at a premium, shouldn't you be trying to get as many as you can?
Right. Especially that deep in the zone, right?
Right. And how often with that quarterback, we know they scored the touchdown with the turnover in the red zone. He might be thinking, how often are they going to be back there with this guy, right? I mean, sometimes that's the honesty the coach is having too. He's not going to come out and say that like, hey, man, we were stuck with Jarrett Stidham. What do you want us to do? But I don't know. There's a lot of things that make sense about that decision. And I just think saying take the points, you don't just get to collect the points. You have to make the kick. And in that game, there was a 20% chance the field goal was going to be made. So I have no problem with what Payton did.
Yeah, and we didn't have a problem with it in the moment either. I didn't have my headset in to hear Jim and Tony at the time, but generally speaking, both on air and off air, and with Evan Washburn, who I was with for this game, it didn't seem like the people who were there covering the game as part of the broadcast were too concerned with that decision. It felt like the right decision at the time. I was just curious how it felt from the outside. And like you said, the kicks were pretty inconsistent during the game. And with that inconsistent wind, I mean, both guys missed during warmups in that direction. It was from a further distance, but the wind picked up once the game started. That could have easily been a part of his decision as much as it was, let's just go for it on 4th because the analytics told me to. I mean, Sean Payton's a championship winning coach. He's not just going to look at an analytics sheet and be like, well, I'm making all my decisions based on this. This is a guy who's been around the block and knows the feel of the game and when he should go for things and when he shouldn't. I'm not going to question. It's easy to question it now that you've lost by 3, but it's a little bit of a tougher decision in the moment, and it felt like the right one at the time.
Well, here's the misconception a lot of people have that try to have this conversation too, is none of those decisions are made entirely on analytics. Analytics may give you a suggestion, and it's still a coach's decision. And coaches decide very often to go for it when analytics say kick a field goal or kick when the analytics say go. So, and there's just not as many times that are talked about. I think with the ones that, especially in a game that ends up being close or longer distances or odd spots on the field. But that's a misconception that a lot of people have. And analytics are just it's a guideline. And every decision is still the coach's decision in the moment. And the coach is deciding to either agree with it or to go against it. And I think they go against it more often than people realize. So that's another thing I want people to understand, that, there's no analytics department has rule over the head coach in an in-game situation.
Exactly. Like the coach still decides whether to follow those guidelines or not. It's just like your pregame prep notes, just like your it's like you said, they have those phones on the sideline. There's not one directly to the analytics department, and a bunch of nerds are telling you when to go for it and when not to. Right. So a good idea in making sure that was said out loud, Johnny. Overall, I mean, again, Denver's defense still looked really strong despite the elements. They still did their job. They're going to have a very tough fight in front of them, though, with how good that Seattle offense has looked. Another awesome barn burner between the Seahawks and the Rams on the NFC side. I mean, if you pick your 10 best games of the season, all three Rams-Seahawks games might make that list. What was your takeaway watching the game at home?
So unfortunately, I didn't get to watch that much of it, but
you didn't watch Sam's Rehawks?
I didn't know that. I couldn't find that on my TV guide, but we had a lot of bedtime and stuff after watching the first game. But yeah, it looks like it was a blast, and something I figured out later once I was looking at the box score. It's only the second time ever that opposing quarterbacks both had 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks in a playoff game. The other one was the awesome Chiefs-Bills overtime game, 4 or 5 years ago. So when Mahomes and Allen went nuts. So if it's on par with that, then it must have been great.
Yeah, man, like you said, just an exciting game from those two. I mean, it's the craziest thing is that of all of this is that Sam Darnold will be in the Super Bowl this year. That to me, that's just a guy. I mean, and it goes to show something that we've talked about in the past. Coaching is extremely important in this league. I mean, it's extremely important. That's why, like, people shouldn't be upset that the Eagles are taking their time finding the right OC. You need the right guy in place to be successful long-term in this league. You need, from a player perspective, from a franchise perspective, you need the right set of circumstances. Tom Brady has said multiple times, if he didn't end up in New England, he probably isn't the exact same guy. And Belichick has hinted the same about Brady himself. If I don't have him, we probably don't win all those Super Bowls. It was a perfect blend. How many top can't-miss prospects end up being duds in the NFL because they're not put in the right situation? And one thing I have been a big proponent of in the past is building in the trenches out and then trying to find the quarterback, whether that's through trading up and getting a high draft pick or finding a veteran like Sam Darnold who has the raw tools that you can mold. If you can't protect a guy, that's a terrible situation for a young guy to come into. I don't care how good they are. And with how impatient the league is compared to how it used to be, like, could you imagine what Twitter would have said about Peyton Manning that first year when he threw all those interceptions? Like, they would have been ready to give up on him, and he's a first ballot guaranteed bona fide stud Hall of Famer, right? It's just these things matter a lot more than people are willing to admit, willing to listen to, and it goes to show what between last year, good situation in Minnesota, this year, great situation in Seattle, what you can do when the right things are said, when the right things are taught.
Yep.
Anything else on the Super Bowl, John? I mean, we're going to have plenty of time to go deep dive into it. So next week or we'll likely have all of our notes and talk to you guys more in depth about what those matchups might look like on both sides of the ball. But generally speaking, I mean, obviously it's exciting. It's for those who feel like it's a retread Super Bowl. These are two completely different franchises than they were the last time they faced off in the Super Bowl. You have a second-year guy versus the redemption story of Sam Darnold. So should be an exciting build, but anything for the people before we move on to the Eagles OC search?
No, it's going to be – you got a young quarterback against the best defense in the league. It's going to be great.
Should be a great one, and a really good defense on the other side versus Sam Darnold as well. We talked all about the coaching. Real quick before we move on to our bigger topics like the Sixers, wanted to talk about the latest on the Eagles OC search. I think they're only 5 of the 13 people that they interviewed still are out there. They actually, the latest from late yesterday, Eagles are conducting a second interview with Packers quarterback coach Sean Mannion. Seems like it could be a promising choice there. And I like Jordan Love. I like some of the things that they've done over the last couple years. Don't know a lot about the guy beyond the fact that he's kind of connected to McVay and Stefanski and Kubiak. So he's had some connections to those guys as a player, and then he joined the Packers staff just in 2024 as an offensive assistant, and then promoted to the quarterbacks coach last year. So really young, obviously not a experienced play caller per se, like a lot of fans are looking for. Do you have thoughts on, have you looked much into him, and do you have thoughts on taking somebody from Green Bay and bringing them here to Philly?
Even if I looked into him, I wouldn't have many thoughts on the coach I know nothing about, but he's been around some really good offensive coaches as a player and a coach. So if they like him, great.
Well, that is good. I'm trying to see if there's any
I feel bad, but
that's news
that's going to be my continued, I don't know anything about coaches. So that this guy seems good. This guy seems interesting. His team scored a lot of points. I don't know. I feel like we could spend so much time talking about whether we like an assistant coach from another team or we don't. And I truly have no idea. So good luck to the Eagles in the interview process, and good luck to all the candidates. And I will really be rooting for the guy they choose.
That's fair. It's something we'll have to touch on, but I think it's fair that if we don't know much about the guy, how much analysis can we really give, especially if they haven't been in this role before? It's not like a veteran head coach who has experience as a play caller or a veteran OC who's looking for a new role. Nagy, we could probably give a little bit more insight on, but still, at the end of the day, if how much time we're going to spend on a guy that might not end up being here anyway. So it's something that we'll keep giving you guys the latest and greatest on. I know that they had discussions with Charlie Weiss last week, so there's some interesting options out of college, but it seems like he's going to stay put. So we'll have to, again, we'll keep you updated on the latest and greatest. A guy that we liked last week, Declan Doyle. He seems to be leaning towards pulling himself out of consideration and sticking around with the Bears for a little bit longer. So that is the latest and greatest news on the offensive coordinator front. I'm not too worried about the fact that the job's taking a little bit longer. It's a team we made the playoffs, we're eliminated. A lot of these teams had their searches started already. We can get into the specifics about why this might be taking so long, but I know it's a head coach, not an offensive coordinator, but they took a long time to hire Doug Peterson and were killed in the media for that hire. He won them a Super Bowl. They took a long time to hire Nick Sirianni. They were killed at the time for that hiring. He's won them a Super Bowl. I'm not too worried about them taking a little bit longer to make sure that this is the right coach instead of just going and getting the first big name that they like a McDaniel or a Daboll. That's my personal thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what hiring a coach faster than another team even means.
It's just a talking point. It's just things to get enraged about if you listen to Philly radio. That's really what it is.
Yeah, it's not a talking point for me. They get the right guy. And I said this all through the Penn State coaching search. Everybody's all up in arms. How could they possibly do this? How could it take so long? What are they doing? They have no clue. They hired maybe the best guy out there.
There you go.
So
there you go. Well, hopefully the Eagles can make a similar safe decision. One thing that we've been talking about in Philly media circles is a little bit of a teaser that one Adam Schefter left a local radio station with yesterday. We'll touch on it real quick. Not going to spend a lot of time on it because it wasn't on our airwaves, but on 97.5 The Fanatic, as they were saying their goodbye to Shefty on his weekly hit, they said, all right, Adam, maybe we'll have some OC news to talk about next week when you come back. And he hinted at potentially some other news to be talked about and gave no further details, hung up the phone, but basically made it feel like maybe there will be something else we can talk about too, which of course has led to rumors running rampant. Is Vic Fangio retiring? Is Jeff Stoutland retiring? Is Lane Johnson or BG retiring? Is Nick being fired based on feedback from these OC searches? Who knows what's going on? So make sure you stay tuned to 97.5 when they have Schefter on next Wednesday. Maybe you'll learn a little bit more. The main reason I wanted to touch on it is because there was one kind of connection on Jeff McClain's latest podcast. He had Mike Silver from The Athletic on, who's pretty tuned in down at the NovaCare complex. And he said that Stoutland, that there's, through his sourcing and through his reporting, Stoutland does not know if he's going to be back next season, which could be a big blow to this team because they are built on, the offense is built on the back of that offensive line. I know it's built on Barkley, but you saw Barkley take a big step back this year because of the health of that O-line. If Stoutland's gone, does that impact Lane Johnson's decision? Stoutland also, again, this is through Silver's reporting, noted that some of the run game coordinator duties were stripped from him this last season. wonder if that has played into some of these discussions overall. That being said, Diana Rossini, who's also pretty tuned in down there, and if you might not like a lot of her reports, but she's been pretty consistent in her reporting the last couple of years, she has said that all of the feedback from coaches and their camps during interviews with the Eagles have been extremely positive, mostly focused on what the oversight will be when it comes to Nick having influence on the game plan and the game calling, that they would like something more like what the OC had last year in Philadelphia. So kind of just a general wrap up. And the last item from his pod, make sure you go give it a listen. Jeff McClain's Uncovering the Birds pod. They do really seem to think that Nagy could be the next OC. So again, nothing official, but some interesting nuggets, especially with the Schefter news yesterday, or the Schefter tease, the non-news that made everybody think all for 24 hours. And then, of course, McClain talking about Stoutland not knowing if he'll be back next year. Just some things to think about while we're already frustrated about the OC conversation.
We are not already frustrated about the OC conversation. I'd like to make that clear.
We being the general Philadelphia fan, we here on the Brotherly Glove podcast, not so much. Good clarification, John. Yeah, not much else to talk about on Eagles OC search. The Phillies, little bit of news out of Citizens Bank Park. The Phillies and fan favorite Harrison Bader, unfortunately, there will not be a surprise reunion. Bader agrees to a 2-year deal with the San Francisco Giants to be their everyday center fielder. He talked on a podcast shortly after the deal was announced, talking about how he loved his time in Philly, how he had hoped to be back here. I think the contract and the market for him ended up being a little bit less than most people thought. A lot of the projections were 3 years, around 15 a year, around what JT ended up with. And of course, the question from a lot of fans became, well, if this was going to be the market for Bader, would you rather have had Bader for $500K more than you gave to Adolis Garcia, who is a rebound candidate, excuse me. And then a lot of people get into the conversation, well, you needed to upgrade. If you want to give Crawford the runway, then you could have moved Marsh out of there and figured out something with him. Ultimately, they have who they have, right? You can't – I think that people would have been more up in arms if they didn't go after Garcia, waited out Bader's market and still didn't get him back. Now you have no guy, and you're going in with maybe Kemp being a permanent outfielder instead of a potential short side platoon with Marsh on the other side. And Johnny, you and I have talked about it, but Bader had a career year. For the 3 years before that offensively, he was a below average performer when it comes to some of the advanced metrics. OPS plus, he had an 80 OPS plus, meaning he was 20% worse than the average player over the 3 years prior to the year with Minnesota and Philly last season. Garcia and Marsh, their OPS pluses over that same period, over 100. So yes, last year, Bader was the better player. I am a big believer in year to year. Look at the back of the baseball card. A guy is more likely to revert to his mean than he is to repeat at age 30 his first breakout offensive season. And I would say that if you look at at the back of all three of these guys' baseball cards and look over the last 3-4 years, you might end up with a better offensive outfield this year than you would have if Bader were in there, as opposed to one of these other two in Garcia and Marsh.
All right.
Any thoughts on the Bader? Are you disappointed in them not getting him? Are you surprised by the market? Anything on Bader? And
no, I would have liked him for his defense and being right-handed, and I think it's been pretty clear that he wasn't going to be there unless they shifted. I would have liked him, I think, in place of Garcia. Garcia is a better power hitter, and I'm also saying, like you said, there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees in any of this stuff. There's no guarantees that the guy they do sign is going to be good, the guy they don't sign is going to be bad, that any player is going to repeat any sort of however many seasons back or last season or whatever. And so I would have done it not thinking, oh, he's absolutely going to just repeat what he did for the 2 months he was in Philly for the next 2 years. But I liked what he brought to the table and being right-handed. And I also think they're paying Garcia $10 million this year. They're paying Bader's getting $10 million each for the next 2 years. And I know Garcia is supposed to be a pretty good defender. I just think they're going to be awfully left-handed, but this isn't a surprise. I'll tell you what the surprise was to me. So when I went and looked at this, and I know I've talked about the Phillies outfield. I'm not inspired by the Phillies outfield right now. I'm hopeful, and I don't dislike any of the players out there. I think the day they signed Garcia, I told you, I like that. Not thinking that I thought that was the Max Kepler, Austin Hayes $10 million flyer. I didn't know that was the $10 million on top of $20 million for one guy to play right field. So,
right.
But there was something else that made me think of it too. I saw that Brandon Marsh was in the top 10 on someone's top 10 left fielders on MLB Network yesterday. And I'm a fan of Brandon Marsh, but I know that like sometimes his numbers haven't been there. He had that tough start to the season last year and then was awesome afterwards. But I went back and looked. He's been pretty durable. He played 130 games in each of the last 3 seasons. I saw stuff about outfield, left field, all this stuff. I try not to even do that. Over the last 3 years of players that have played 400 games, Brandon Marsh is 30th in baseball in OPS. 30th. Among all players who have been on the field for an average of 130 games a year, he's 30th in OPS. I'm going to pull it up to find the list, but that was a pleasant surprise to me. And I'll say there's something about, I know we talk about platoons and whether someone's going to be given a chance to, correct deficiencies or anything, and guys who are working really hard at stuff. I think we know all these guys work all the time. They work really hard. They're at the ballpark day and night. And it's not always about, hey, we're not going to give this guy a chance. Sometimes you've got a guy who really does damage that needs to be given that opportunity. Like we talk about it in the infield with Stott and Sosa. I know that's been a conversation I've heard about when is Stott going to get a chance to prove himself against lefties. You got a guy that's slugging 900 against lefties sitting on your bench. You need to put that guy in when there's a lefty on the mound. It's less about Bryson Stott than it is having this weapon in Edmundo Sosa and sitting there so Stott can work through something. You got to deploy your weapons and put your players in the best situations. And whatever people think of Rob Thompson, he does that. And I'll say Brandon Marsh being 30th in the major leagues in OPS over the last 3 seasons proves that point. Rob Thompson puts him in advantageous situations. He works hard and has improved as a player. You put those things together, and that's all-star level. You know how many hitters make the all-star team every year? It's more than 30.
Yeah.
If you're a top 30 hitter, you're an all-star. So I need to maybe re-look at my – I'm not saying this makes, the Phillies outfield like, cut and dry best of the best, but I might have been a little more down on Brandon Marsh than I should be, and I really like his game and the things he brings. Maybe it's not as bad as I thought. I'm still not thrilled that I don't think there was a piece because whenever I've looked at it compared to what I looked at the end of last year. Not just, hey, how does this look? But there was something to solve at the end of last season. Here's what the outfield looked like at the end of the year. We needed to solve something. Here's what it looks like now. Did we make the right moves? I think we didn't. But that has nothing to do with Brandon Marsh, and I want to put that out there that I'm going to be doing a little more Brandon Marsh cheerleading, because we've got a guy on our team who's in the top 30 in OPS over the last 3 seasons.
Yeah, and huge cut down on his strikeouts last year too. A lot of the talk going into last season was he's not effective enough overall to have that much swing and miss, and he cut down significantly this year. He can be a backup center fielder if you need. He is an elite defender in the corners. On top of that, being top 10 and one of the top 30 hitters. Here's a fun one for you, Johnny. You likely have seen this somewhere, but BABIP, I think, is a really good advanced statistic. Kind of shows you what happens when you actually put the ball in play. So it's removing your home runs and removing your strikeouts, your walks. When you put the ball in play, are you successful at getting on base? Of players in the history of Major League Baseball with at least 1,000 at-bats, Brandon Marsh has the second highest BABIP of all time. 371 behind Ty Cobb at 383. Brandon Marsh, second highest BABIP ever in Major League Baseball.
Go Brandon Marsh. Let me just read you 27 to 31 on that list. These are the guys 27th to 31st over the last 3 years, 400 games played in OPS. Trey Turner, Alex Bregman, Manny Machado, Brandon Marsh, Julio Rodriguez. That's Brandon Marsh.
Yeah, you're in the same category with those guys. You're doing something right.
So he's sandwiched between Manny Machado and Julio Rodriguez, who I think almost any team would take right now.
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say that if you wouldn't take them, you're foolish. And there's a reason that the Phillies are entrusting this guy to be the everyday left fielder, or damn near the everyday left fielder.
So no surprise that Bader's gone. I on record as I would like to plug that guy into center field and let him run. I mean, I would have loved you signed Bader. I would have Crawford in left, Bader in center, and Marsh in right. And I think Marsh would be a really good right fielder. So there's things to do there, but no surprise he's not coming back, and doesn't change my outlook on any of this stuff. But what did change it was looking deeper at Brandon Marsh yesterday and coming away pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, people, do your research. That's what we're out here to tell you. And I could probably tell you that about a million things, but even in sports, do your research. And if you're not going to do your research, subscribe to the Brotherly Glove podcast, because we got a professional researcher here with us. Come on.
Just fire this pod up if you're not going to do it.
That's it. No big deal. Auto download, auto subscribe, like and comment everything. Whatever you got to do to show your Brandon Marsh love, because we're going to tell you all about why you should love the guy even more than we already did. Johnny, we talked a little bit about the Eagles. Not a lot of news. It's the offseason. Talked a little bit about the Eagles. Phillies, whether you love them or hate them or are disappointed or think that things are going well, they've made some moves to try and improve, but we got some time for spring training to start. But we got a team in the middle of a great season, a team that had frustrated fans for quite a while, seems to be playing like everybody hoped that they could if things went well. And that, of course, is the 76ers. Flipping over to the hardwood, awesome game this week against the Bucks. Really impressive numbers from the big three in Maxey, George, and Embiid. I think Embiid was a point shy of his sixth straight 30-plus point performance. He had a triple-double earlier in the week. He really seems to have found his touch again, even if he looks physically limited still. He's looked good on the defensive end. Paul George really has looked good defensively. And Tyrese Maxey, rising starter in the All-Star game. I think if you don't know about him by now, then you haven't been watching basketball at all, because the guy's all over the place. John, you have done a lot of deep dives into the Sixers recently. So why don't you start us off with your thoughts on the Sixers and how good they've been recently?
Yeah, well, they had a really tough loss to the Knicks on Saturday and got blown out in Charlotte on Monday, which was not encouraging. But they also, George and Embiid didn't play. And the Hornets are a sneaky, frisky team. Con Knipple's been great. LaMelo Ball, when he's healthy, looks really good. Miles Bridges is the guy that everybody expected him to be. They kind of do it all, defense, hustle, everything. They got some players on that team, and that's a really good team. And to go down there on a Monday afternoon and be on the road and lose that game without those guys doesn't surprise me. It is a little like Edgecombe and Maxey combined to shoot 5 for 23 and made 1 3-pointer. So there's a little bit of concern there. But if they're really keyed up on those guys with the other guys out, then maybe that's something. But yeah, you mentioned the big win over the Bucks on, was that Tuesday night?
Yeah.
No Giannis. He didn't play in that game. But I'll say the two things, couple things, I'm not going to limit it to two. One thing is they hit 22 of 42 from 3-point range, and that's with Maxey going 2 for 8. Maxey hasn't shot the ball as well, and I'm a little concerned that I know he's young, and we talk about, oh, man, let that guy go, and he's leading the league in minutes. Hopefully it's not going to wear him out, and he's going to be an all-star starter, so he's not going to get a break over the all-star break. They got to make sure that they're keeping him fresh. As young as he is, guys still can't get ridden into the ground. But he was 2 for 8 from 3-point range. That means the rest of the team was 20 for 34. They shot 52%. It's their first game over 50% this year. And I think the previous 7 games they had shot 31% over the previous 7 games combined. So I don't know. That's not something that's likely to me to continue. It was a great shooting night, and they took advantage of Giannis being out, and they made a lot of shots. Paul George was 9 for 15. So he had his best game of the year, 32 points, 9 3-pointers. He had 5 boards, 5 assists, and only 1 turnover. So they didn't turn the ball over very much. Embiid only had 2 with his 29 points. Maxey only had 1. But a couple things that really stood out. Embiid only played 29 minutes, which I really like. And then I'm looking at the bench. I mentioned him before. Jared McCain played 24 minutes. I don't know if this is some sort of like audition thing because teams are asking about him. We've got a week to get him back on the court and get him to put some numbers up. Or if it's, hey, how can we integrate him and utilize him? Because he shot 6 for 8, 5 for 6 from downtown in 24 minutes. And I really like the idea if Nick, I don't know what the rotations are and things, but I'd really like them to find a way to get Jared McCain playing more and get him going. I think he would be a really good weapon to have, and maybe mitigate if they don't make a huge trade. Like I just think you want guys like that. And we talked about the 3-point shooting last week. Their top 5 guys in attempts all shoot pretty well. But if Maxey's dipping recently, I'd like to see McCain out there and figure it out. And even with all those guys playing, he got 24 minutes and made some shots. So that's really encouraging to me. And let me pull it up. They have a really tough schedule coming up, I think. They've got, I want to say it's the Kings tonight.
Kings are tonight. I know that one.
Yeah, so Kings tonight, Pelicans on Saturday. They should win both of those games flat out to finish off the little homestand. But then they got 5 straight road games: Clippers, Warriors, Lakers, Suns, and Trailblazers. The first 3 definitely tough. Clippers are down in the standings, but recently they've been great. So I think that's more indicative of who they are. So that's 3 really tough games. And the first 2 are it's the night before and then the night of the trade deadline. So they've got these 2 games against not good teams at home. They got to win those games before they head out west. And right now they're playing pretty well. They've got some good wins. That overtime win over the Rockets the other night was good. And look, if this is just regular rest and these guys are going to stay healthy, them playing together has been really good. And if you're going to incorporate McCain, I really like the way this is looking.
Yeah, man. If McCain can come back and figure out some of those shooting issues that affected him early in the season, that should only be a way to limit the wear and tear on Maxey the rest of the year and keep him fresh. Not that you would significantly cut his minutes, but obviously you just talked about it. He's leading the league in minutes, and you don't want to run a guy into the ground before the most important time of the season. So McCain coming back and making an impact offensively would be huge for this club, especially how well they're playing elsewhere with Embiid and George. It's funny watching Embiid too. Like, he doesn't, if you're watching him and you're not paying attention to the stats or what he's making, if you're just watching the up and down, the back and forth, he still doesn't look right, but he doesn't look uncomfortable or like he's limited to the point where it's slowing him down, right? He's still making a big impact. I think the reason is, man, that the touch that he's always had. He's been able to make a shot from anywhere on the court for so long. And I feel like when you're that big, when you have that kind of touch and that kind of soft approach at times, even if you're banging people down, those little flick of the wrist that go in with ease is really going to help him work his way back up as he's recovering physically. If he can still continue to put up numbers despite not being 100% physically and then getting there, that break's going to be huge. We'll see what he looks like on the other side. But yeah, man, they're firing on all cylinders right now, still in the middle of that pack when it comes to the top 8 for the playoffs. I think they're 5th right now after those 2 losses, but we saw it. They were in 4th place when we were on the pod last week. So right there in the mix of things, should be exciting. And like you said, the deadline right around the corner. There's been plenty of talk about the teams that need to make moves. But the biggest name on the deadline, everybody always likes to concoct what a trade would look like for the biggest names. And of course, the biggest name right now is Giannis Antetokounmpo. What would you like to consider for the Sixers to potentially give up in a deal to bring in Giannis? Would you even bother with a move to bring him in, knowing that you have Embiid on the roster? What's your thoughts on Giannis and his potential fit for the Sixers?
Well, the fit could be funny depending on who's going out, and with that salary, there's a couple obvious options. I would absolutely not trade Maxey or Edgecombe. So if that's, and the Bucks have every right to demand one of those guys. So if that's what it comes down to, then I wouldn't add him I wouldn't add him. I would absolutely consider Paul George or Joel Embiid though, and I know that sounds crazy, but you're talking about the salaries will work with a lot fewer pieces needing to go in. We're talking about picks and whatever the Sixers have to offer in that regard. And I just think if you're going to move off him, you're going to want somebody. They would want somebody like Maxey or Edgecombe. They'll get a guy like that from another team. If for some reason they want to take back Paul George or Joel Embiid as their centerpiece, then I would really consider it. Now, I feel like if it was George, the guy I'd like to, I shouldn't say like to trade. He'd be the guy I'd be more okay with parting with. But I don't know about the fit with Antetokounmpo and Embiid together. Now, what that would do is potentially flip a lot of those. If Nurse is smart about it, what we've seen for years is all those non-Embiid minutes when Embiid's plus 20 in a game and they get outscored by 25 in the 8 minutes he's off the floor. Like they can't have that. And if you stagger their minutes, if all of Embiid's minutes on the bench have Giannis on the floor, it's a big difference. Now we're talking about we're worried about Embiid, a really big guy who, those guys, no matter what, often have trouble staying healthy. You're talking about the same thing and adding that to the mix. I don't know if that's smart. There's no guarantees there. But my guess is that the Bucks would demand either Maxey or Edgecombe, and the Sixers would absolutely say no, and that's probably going to be the end of the conversations. But if they're for some reason willing to talk about one of those two other big salaried guys, I would like to see what that deal would look like. And people smarter than me would figure out whichever guy is going out how Giannis fits in with the rest. I think it's interesting. And look, the Sixers, we've never seen the Sixers win a title. So, I was young, but I don't remember it. We have never seen the Sixers win a championship. So I don't know if Daryl Morey is that kind of big swing guy. He talks about needing the third star. I mean, right now they have 4. So he might be content with what they've got and let these guys go. And if you add McCain, and I don't know if there's other moves to make, but that's how I look at it with Giannis. He's awesome. And in my mind, I'm surprised every time I see that he's only 31 years old. He seems like he'd be older. He's just been in our lives for so long. But yeah, absolutely not giving up one of those two young guys, and would figure out what it takes if one of those other two guys could be part of it.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I wonder if they were set on Edgecombe, would McCain and more picks be a suitable replacement for Edgecombe and less picks? I don't know how much difference there is between those two players outside of Philadelphia. I think that I just don't know how much those guys have been covered and how they've been covered elsewhere. But I wonder if obviously you would stay away from moving Maxey. You'd probably need George's contract in there. I don't think that the Sixers would be interested in trading Joel Embiid unless he demanded a trade. I think that they know how important he is to the history of this franchise. They want him to be a Sixer forever. And I would think that they would do whatever they could to keep that. There is a report. Jake Fisher and Mark Stein have been closely tracking and develop the trade market around Giannis. Their reporting suggests that the Sixers haven't contacted the Bucks, but that Giannis has identified playing with Maxey as a potential a place that he would be very interested in coming to Philly based on what he's seen from Maxey more than anybody else, which is really promising because most people I would think would want to come here to be with Embiid, and this guy's like, yeah, Embiid's great, but I like the guy who's running up and down the court all day and doesn't mind passing the ball to me, and that incredible step back jumper. He thinks that their games could fit well together, according to reports right now. So that would be an interesting take. I think that if there were to be a move based on that news alone, Giannis wouldn't want Maxey in the deal, just like the Sixers wouldn't want Maxey in the deal.
Maxey would not be in the deal. There would be nothing to worry about there.
Yeah, they would. Maury would just hang the phone up immediately. Like, or for today's people, you can't do the thumb and pinky combo. You just got to go flat hand to do your phone calls. For those on the audio only pod, I'm making ridiculous motions with my hands for that one. So ask your kids about it or your nephews. You'll understand.
Yeah, I mean the thing that jumps out to me about the lineup when I mentioned if Embiid is off, having Giannis out there, I got to look more about their rotations and who's playing what. But the Sixers have this strange thing that I don't know. I stumbled on last week and have been looking at. So first quarter, they're right in the middle. They're plus 12, 15th in the NBA. Second quarter, they're great, plus 105 scoring, outscoring their opponent by 105 points. That's fourth best. So fourth best in the second quarter. In the third quarter, they're outscored by 187 points this year, easily the worst in basketball. The two teams ahead of them are the Utah Jazz and the New Orleans Pelicans, and they stink and are tanking. So I don't understand what happened. So second quarter, plus 105, fourth best. Third quarter, minus 187, worst. Fourth quarter, plus 89, sixth best. And it's definitely been an issue. They won the third quarter against Milwaukee the other night. They outscored them by 2, which certainly helps. They ended up winning by 17. But in those 2 losses, the previous 2 games, they got outscored by Charlotte by 25 in the third quarter alone. And then they got outscored by the Knicks by 17. They lost by 3. It's definitely an issue, and I'm going to dig deeper and find out. I don't know if it's clear. I mean, it seems almost obvious that it's however they're staggering the minutes and whatever. But that's going to put them in a really big hole. And the fact that they're so good in the fourth quarter is helpful, but I don't think you want to put yourself in that kind of hole and see if you can get out of it. They had lost the third quarter in the previous 4 games. And then something else just quirky about it. They've only had 3 times where they've won the third quarter by 10 points. They've had 13 times they've lost the third quarter by 10 points. Oof. 13 times you get outscored by 10. I don't understand that. And especially some of these huge numbers, 25 against Charlotte. Now, a bunch of these are on the road and stuff, but I just don't get that. And I'm going to try to dig a little deeper and figure out what the story is there. But not saying Giannis is the only answer to that, but just to tie that idea together of like whatever the rotation is and how they're doing this, it's probably not going to be a guy like Giannis to come in and solve the problem. So I don't know what the solve is, and it's got to be internal, I would think. And I'm sure I'm not the first or only person to notice this. It could be that that's what they're going to stick with it because it gives us the best chance. However they figured it out, but it doesn't seem like putting yourself in that big of a hole almost intentionally is a good idea. So I hope that changes, and I hope Nurse is looking at that and makes an adjustment.
Now, John, I love what you have here, but one thing that I'm noticing, and we'll probably need to do some additional research to have a full, expansive conversation on it, but it seems very much, if you split the game into halves, the first half of each half, they're average or below average. The second half of each half, they're really strong. I know that it's not the same as in football where you have these scripted plays, and once you get beyond that, it's kind of reacting to what's happening on the field. A lot can be said or not be said about halftime adjustments or quarter adjustments. It seems, though, like they're getting off to these slow starts, adjusting during the half and really closing strong in both the first and second half. Is there something to be said about that, or is basketball just so much different than the other sport that, one, it's going to need additional research, like you said, and 2, it's just kind of more of a crapshoot because of the way that the game is played?
So I got 2 thoughts. I mean, like you said, it's not really, they don't have scripted plays necessarily. There's stuff they like, but a lot of teams do have, and not that they stick strictly to the script. That's a lot of words that sound the same. But a lot of them do have a framework of when the star players are gonna sit generally. Like Embiid's gonna play the first 5 minutes, then sit and come back before the end, or play the whole thing. Come back at this point, 4 minutes. Maybe they get in the last 2 minutes of one quarter and the next 2 minutes of the next quarter, and with the break, it gives you some more time, whatever. So every team has some idea of how they want to do that, and I think with their stars, they probably generally stick to it pretty well. So that's why I keep saying about however Nurse is managing the minutes and staggering the minutes. I don't want to say it's not working. They're in a playoff position, but like I just wonder if there's a way to up that up the floor a little bit. I don't know that much. You mentioned adjustments. I don't know much about adjustments. They're not sitting like in a tape lab, I don't think. But like what I would say is it would concern me if that's the case. Let's say they're adjusting well to what they're seeing. Why are they so unprepared to start the game and start the third quarter to fit? Like you're scouting that team for a couple of days, I'd imagine, right? You walk in and it's essentially a wash in the first quarter. I mean, you're not going to win everything, but if you're an average team, I think the Sixers are shooting for higher than average. So if coming out of the gate, they're an average team, that would worry me. And especially coming out of halftime once they've gotten themselves together. But it seems more minutes and lineup related to me. But yeah, we'll try to figure out more, maybe ask around a little bit.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. I'll talk to some of the folks I know, like my guy Zach, who we talked about last week with his great deep dive into what the Sixers will be looking at leading into the deadline from Metro Philadelphia and Philly Sports Network. So I'll talk to him a little bit more so we can get a more full picture of what this team is looking like and what could be leading to some of these potential issues in those first and third quarters. Johnny, I know that they got a packed schedule. Like you just talked about, I know that the Flyers have a game against the Bruins tonight. They are still in the mix of things, although they've faded as of late. Some adjustments will be made there. So we'll talk more with our Flyers experts. We do have some plans, tentative plans that we're working on to have some great Flyers guests come in as well to talk puck with us here on the Brotherly Glove podcast. But that wraps us up for this week's, folks. A little bit shorter of an episode. We are trying to get a more firm schedule out there, but we appreciate you guys showing us love and joining these conversations with us. Let us know on all of our socials at Bro Glove Podcast, at Brotherly Glove Podcast, at Brotherly Glove Pod. There's probably some sort of combination out there, but it's always on the ticker at the bottom of our screen. You'll be able to find it. If you search Brotherly Glove Podcast, you will find us the blue logo with our wonderful, beautiful faces at the bottom and a nice maroon coloring. So make sure you give us a shout if you haven't already. If you found us by accident, review, like, subscribe. We love it. Yep. And of course, on socials, let us know what you guys think and what you want us to talk about next.
Yeah, next week we're going to talk about Super Bowl, right? We'll talk about the game a little bit, and we'll also talk about our Super Bowl experience and Eagles. Like, we root for a team that's been to 3 of the last 8 Super Bowls. That's a completely foreign existence. So, as we get to Super Bowl week, let's talk about what it's been like to watch the Eagles go to the Super Bowl 3 times in a decade. So we'll chat about that. And Kyle, you mentioned we'll have some people come on and talk Flyers with us, and hopefully talk some Olympic hockey with the Olympic break coming up. But there's a lot to do. Spring training is right around the corner. Pitchers and catchers are reporting in 2 weeks. So plenty of Phillies breakdowns to come, more on the Sixers. We'll see if they do anything major or minor at the deadline. We'll have some of our friends on to talk Sixers, Flyers, and a bunch of other stuff. And then before we know it, Super Bowl will be over. Draft will be coming. Philly season will be starting. It never ends.
Yes, sir. It never ends. We will have a cavalcade of guests. One of them, I think, would be perfect for that conversations about the Super Bowl next week. The guy who made us brothers in the first place, our father, John Fisher. We want to find a way to get him in and talk about his experience as a fan, having to wait so long to see that Super Bowl. And now here we are with 3 appearances and 2 championships in the last 8 years. So a lot of fun things to come up. Johnny already told you he's going to look into those, the differences in those first and third quarters. Expect at some point, maybe not the next episode, but expect at some point that deep dive into Brandon Marsh. And like we talked about, all of our famous family and friends will be here to help us along the way. We appreciate you guys keeping it tuned in to us guys. And Johnny, I always love and appreciate you, my brother.
Same, brother.
All right. Appreciate you guys. And we'll catch you next time right here on the Brotherly Glove Podcast.